And gentlemen, it is now the 2023 draft cycle, and this is the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness, and we have no special guests today, but we're going to get producer Dave in the co-host chair, and we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to talk Lewis Cine, the first-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings, the overarching thoughts of the Vikings' first draft with Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell, and what to expect from Lewis Cine this year, and then just some general thoughts as we move forward throughout the offseason. Even though the draft is done and the majority of the offseason has been completed, the content never stops here on the Climbing the Pocket YouTube channel. So strap up. It's time to talk about the new era.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show. Tyler Forness, contributor at NBC Sports Edge and USA Today's Vikings Wire, along with being a member at Climbing the Pocket.
Boom! Welcome. This is the Real Forno Show, and I am your host, Tyler Forness. We've got producer Dave up here. Oh, I used the wrong thumb. There we go. Dave, my man, we were zombies yesterday. How are you feeling today?
I had a little bit more energy this morning. I've since lost that. I need to recharge my batteries, but that's what this is for.
Oh, dude, I feel you. We just put some Budweiser on heavy sale, so I just got a flat for $11. I'm probably going to crack that open here in a little bit. I got a Pizza Hut pizza right next to me that I've been munching on. Let me tell you, the draft is over. And The Vikings have 10 new players that they collected from the draft and 9 undrafted free agents. We're going to talk about one of them in Lewis Cine in a little bit. But, Dave, some of the overarching thoughts from the draft. There's a lot of really interesting talking points. What was your biggest takeaway from the draft for the Vikings?
Well, the draft was weird. When Kwesi started trading, thought that it's a big deal to trade. You know, that first trade with the Lions, and it seemed we got fleeced, but when I look at it, it looks better. And then that second trade with Green Bay, it just feels dirty that you're trading with somebody within your division. But you could debate whether the Lions trade was a win or a loss, but generally anybody in the production side of things looks at the more players you get, the better chance you have. And once I think we fleeced Green Bay on the opposite end, we've got they got a second of ours and we got both their seconds. I think it turned out all right. It turns out, buddy of mine, Ted Glover, that many of you know, made a chart, and I forgot to load it, but I can load it real quickly. That he was bored at work, so he made a flow chart, describing the draft and those trades.
Ooh.
And what happened is, with Kwesi making those trades, he turned a first and second rounder into 4 players. And to me, that's 4 players in the top 66 picks. To me, that's almost, those are guys you can expect to start. And that is really value in my books. So I can't knock that. It's a good deal. Now, what I did find interesting, and heard this on Score North today, is the first 3 picks, Lewis Cine, Andrew Booth, and the 4th pick, Brian Asamoah, are for guys or for positions where we have guys over 30 years old. Lewis Cine, obviously, safety. He's going to play next to Harrison Smith. Hitman is over 30, right? Eventually, hopefully, he develops into the replacement for Harrison. You have Asamoah, who's going to play linebacker eventually, probably start. And we got Kendricks, who's over 30. And then you had Booth, probably the best draft pick of all, because if he's fully healthy, and supposedly he hasn't been since like ninth grade, I think that's going to be an absolute steal. You've got Patrick Peterson, who's the old man in that group. So for the future, building for the future, the rebuild part of it, I think I didn't see that until today. We were tired, 15 hours straight of broadcasting. It was beat. I thought that was actually a good, sound strategy. What did you think?
Honestly, for as much as I was really unsure of what the strategy was, it also made complete sense, Dave. Because one thing we talked about ad nauseum is the fact of what Kwesi's going to do. And what Kwesi ended up doing was, in all honesty, exactly what we thought. He's going to play the board like it's the stock market. And at playing the board like it's stock market, he was able to manipulate those picks, just like that flow chart from Ted showed. And he basically turned 12, 44, and 77 into the top 4 picks. And then they ended up getting a 4th rounder, which they turned into Ty Chandler and Otomewo, the Minnesota defensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
So they turned their first 4 picks into 6 players. And that's not even including the Akayleb, like, you could talk about the Akayleb Evans trade up, but I'm not even going to include that. Like, those first 3 picks turned into 5 players. That's how you manipulate the board. Will those players pan out? We don't know that answer yet. There is a lot of things that have to happen to see if those players are going to pan out. There's a lot of coaching, a lot of developing, a lot of understanding scheme. These guys need to figure out how to play in the NFL too. They need to learn the playbook. They need to make it so they don't have to think and they can just react. And they have to continue to grow and develop and get in that strength and conditioning program and really show something early on in practice. There's a lot of if with this class. I wrote about it for NBC Sports Edge. I gave this class a B. The first 2 picks were home runs. The way they maneuvered the board, they got 2 top 25 prospects at 32 and 42. Great work by Kwesi. After that, there's a lot of question marks.
Well,
and Ingram. Asamoah. Go ahead.
I said as I probably graded a C, but I'm stuck on this 500 mediocre stuff. But when I look at it, and what do I expect of guys that are taken in the first and second round, and then Asamoah at the top of the third, I expect those guys to turn into adequate starters, if not better. And getting adequate starters, if you get 3 in a draft, you had a good draft. Well, if we get 4 in a draft, we had an outstanding draft. And if any of those guys pop to be Pro Bowl level, they were golden. I think this, looking at it in hindsight versus how I looked at it on the days of the draft, I'm liking it more than I did at the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's one of the things about these draft grades. I try not to grade too harshly when I do them, for the sole fact that there's a lot of projection. Some grades, A+, fantastic draft. Think of how many Browns drafts we graded in A because of how much talent they got in the mid-2010s and how bad those players stunk. Johnny Manziel, getting him in the 20s, great value. Trent Richardson, slam dunk. Bombed. They were terrible.
Right.
And it is what it is. Justin Gilbert at 8. Lauded. One of the only players to truly bust out of that top 10. That was the year the Vikings drafted Anthony Barr. I wanted Justin Gilbert. I thought he was going to be a stud. That happens because there is something between the college game and the pro game. It's so incredibly different. Not only do you have to be a hyper athlete, but you have to be really smart and you have to know what you're doing out there at all times. You can't just fake it with athleticism anymore. You have to have the whole package. And
right,
in that transit,
athleticism-wise, everybody at the pro level is easily as fast, as strong, if not faster or stronger than you
Mm-hmm.
are coming out of college. And they're also wiser because they got a few more gray hairs, been playing longer, know how the system works. And to get some 22-year-old that comes in who thinks he knows it all, he's got to learn. And he will learn. He'll have his welcome to the NFL moment. And not all of them make that transition. And it's a shame that
Mm-hmm.
that's the case, but they don't.
Yeah, not all of them do make that transition, and I completely agree with you. I'm I'm very intrigued to see who does and who doesn't, because there are a lot of players in this class that could really go either way. I'm pulling something up that I'm going to send here to you, Dave, just as a kind of on-screen production thing.
Okay.
And it's we're going to use this as a kind of a talking point here as we continue to move on into this class. What I'm very fascinated by is how Kwesi approached the players that he picked.
Okay.
And
there's some storylines there too.
There's 100% some storylines there. And one thing I found fascinating that I don't know if you realized, all 10 prospects played at Power 5 schools. All of them.
Well, I didn't know about the latter ones, but I knew after first 2 days we were talking about that.
And here's another thing. They did not take any Pac-12 prospects. They stayed Midwest and East.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but I just found that interesting. And somebody pointed out on the live stream that with like 6 picks that they had only gone Power 5 schools. And then I'm like, oh. So I'm wondering if this is going to become a trend. And I'm going to look back at Browns drafts the last couple years and see if they only drafted Power 5 guys. Because I can't off the top of my head think if they drafted anybody that wasn't a Power 5 guy. Nick, nothing's wrong with the Pac-12. But it's not viewed as a very strong conference. They have a couple teams really good at the top. And then there's a saying that I don't know if you've heard, the Pac-12 is going to Pac-12, where they just beat the living crap out of each other, and all of a sudden nobody's better than a 9-win team. That, for as good as some of these teams are, they lose to bad Pac-12 teams, and it's consistent. There's a reason why Pac-12 teams normally don't make the playoff. It's not that they're bad. They're all kind of goodish, and nobody's truly great.
Like the Vikings.
Anyways. Yeah. Nick, I didn't know your college team was a Pac-12 team. I really like watching Washington. Their defense is just stupid. Like, fun stupid. I like that. But, Dave, there's a tweet I just sent you from our good friend, Nick Olson. I would love for you to pull it up, please, because this is going to become a really big talking point. They value explosiveness. The 10-yard split is what they really valued, and this is very fascinating. Cine, 99th percentile, fastest of any safety. Ingram, 99th. Asamoah, 97th. Evans, 84th. Chandler, 99th. Lowe, 90th. Naylor, 94th. Muse, Nick got auto-corrected, 82. Like, we're talking about guys who are quick off the ball, who are incredibly explosive when they're trying to move forward. And when you're explosive in that way, you can really make up for a lot of things. Asamoah right now doesn't have the elite vision and football IQ, but his speed makes up for it and he can compensate. Cine has the football IQ, and his speed helps him do things that he shouldn't. There's a play that Nick ended up sharing that I hadn't gotten to see where he is on the left hash, and then he starts rotating to the center in like a cover 3 scheme. He sees a screen and he sprints, and he's able to get a tackle in that hole between the receivers that are blocking. Players aren't supposed to do that.
I did watch that, and it was, for maybe a 3-yard gain or whatever, but it would have been a lot more if you had a normal safety back there that wouldn't have got there. And it was amazing. And we've seen how well he hits, and the comparison about Viking Jerome said, all big hitters. We've heard of a better Andrew Sendejo as a comp. Now
that's what I've used.
Will that get him in trouble a few times? I'm sure it will, but it will be exciting to watch. And it definitely, wasn't he the one that talked about breaking the will of the opposition
Yeah.
Why he played so hard? The whole psychological game of football exists. The whole
Mm-hmm.
idea that I am going to beat you and destroy you, your mind, to take away your will, actually works. Um, you do that from a player, and then suddenly you've got free reign. You're in their head. And that gives you an extra added advantage beyond everything else. You do that, and it's golden. You win all day. And some people are susceptible to it. And if you get beat and beat hard and it hurts, and you get the guy on the other side going, I don't want to do this anymore. He's going to pull up. He's not going to work as hard. It's why back in my day, I hate when I hear that. They told us as a defensive end, you always hit the quarterback. Whether he's got the ball or not, you hit the quarterback. And the whole idea is to get him to the pitch, because we're back in that day, we ran a bunch of option or played a bunch of option teams. You get him to pitch early and commit early. Then you know what he's doing. And you also know that he's not going to come out and try to get around you on a pass play. So it's the psychological part of it. Vikings have had some great players that could get into guys' heads over the years. Absolutely talk smack, get in their heads, and it works. If he brings it physically, and I don't know if he verbally talks, but if he brings it physically, that helps you win games. When games come down to 3 or 4 key plays during, that 60-minute period, if you can get 1 or 2 of those to pull up, not catch the ball because they're worried about being hit or whatever, that gives the Vikings the advantage.
No, I 100% agree. Cine is going to give defenses or offenses fit for the little nuanced things that he's able to do. We're going to kind of break that down here a little bit, but there are a couple more points on the overarching view of this draft class that I really want to point out. Dave, it feels like there's a shift in offensive linemen and the philosophy on who they're going to be drafting. Let me tell you, Dave, I think you're a fan of this because it's about prioritizing 1, pass blocking, and 2, they prioritize length with both Ingram and the Illinois kid. I am blanking on his name. Vidarian Lowe.
The tackle. Yeah.
Yep. Lowe has like 35 and 5/8 inch arm. Ingram's are really long for his size too. They prioritize length, a 10-yard split, that explosiveness, and they're prioritizing pass blocking. It's not all about being an athlete. Yes, is it great that Bradbury can climb to that second level and be an elite reach blocker? Hell yeah, that rules. But at the same time, if you're going to get forklifted because you don't have enough sand in your pants, that doesn't mean a whole lot. Because when those little nuance things.
When it comes to Ingram, you sent me his all-22, which I didn't get a chance to look at today. I do want to look at it. I do expect him. I haven't watched it yet. I will look at it and I'll try to break some of it down on what we can expect, what is good about him, what is not so good, what could be coached, what can't be coached, and see where we can go with him. I think he has more upside because if you can pass block as well as he did in the SEC, we're talking against guys that are NFL caliber. There are things the Vikings can do. And what I heard earlier today, didn't realize, the Vikings are doing a hybrid sort of offense. Instead of wide zone or wide middle, I'm trying to remember what they called it. I think they called it wide middle. It's going to be sort of a hybrid-ish style run blocking scheme, and I'm anxious to see how it works. Well, if you got big guys in the middle with Ezra Cleveland and Ingram on the other side, you can move people, right? It's not a strict power game, but you can move people with running. Yes, Bradbury may be the one that goes out and reaches to the second level where he's good at it. But, and everything else, You're moving the guys that have been a strict pain in the butt for the Minnesota Vikings. Every time we run up the middle, we always seem to get stuffed. Well, hopefully this new hybridish scheme eliminates that, and I'm excited to see that.
Dave, I'm really excited to see it too, because utilizing a hybrid scheme can really be beneficial. You have guys that can not only move people, but they're capable enough. They don't need to be elite at it. Capable enough to be able to do those outside zone blocks, to be able to reach, to be able to climb to the second level. That's what we wanted out of Wyatt Davis, right? Mm-hmm. He wasn't going to get moved or forklifted in pass protection. He was going to be just good enough on the outside to be able to make those blocks. And I think that is just as important as being able to make them on an elite level. Because if you can do both things well, I'd rather have that than Garrett Bradbury be an elite run blocker and atrocious pass blocker at times.
And I do think this hybrid deal will help Wyatt Davis as well. And it's going to be interesting to see who's the starters on the offensive line, who wins those positions, who competes with Bradbury at center, who wins the right guard. How does Wyatt Davis look coming into camp now that he's been training down here in Dallas all off season and with a lineman coach? I'm looking forward to that. It's just, and if you get that good enough to get some push in the running game and good enough pass blocking where you're protecting Kirk Cousins, there's no excuses. This offense should take off.
It should, but let's be honest here. The offense is going to rely on two things. Kirk Cousins' ability to win off structure and maximize pressured situations, because that's where he struggled last year. He was like PFF's 20th ranked quarterback under pressure. First ranked quarterback with a clean pocket. Look, any NFL quarterback can win with a clean pocket.
Oh, I don't know about that, but there's quite a few of them that. But Kirk surely can. Without
when conditions are perfect, Kirk is one of the best in the league, and there's no doubt about it. We are not challenging that here. We are not saying that he's not good enough in those situations. He's more than good enough. In fact, he's great in those situations. Where he needs to improve is the situations where things aren't perfect, where he has to improvise, where he has to take a hit, where he has to wait for Justin Jefferson a half a second to clear on that dig route, on a dagger concept, to be able to slam it down the middle for 15 yards instead of throwing a 3-yard check down to CJ Ham. That's what we need here. Mm-hmm. And if we get that, that's going to take us to the next level. Can Kevin O'Connell extract that out of him? I genuinely don't know if he can. If he does, let's go with this hypothetical. If he does, this team could reach heights that we didn't see possible going into the draft. It really could. Because now if Ingram goes and plays as an average guard, like PFF's 35th out of 70, that's all we're asking. We're asking for average. If he gives us average, that means a whole lot to this offense. It gives Bradbury, for the first time in his career, 2 capable guards next to him. It gives Kirk Cousins more confidence that he's not going to get absolutely slaughtered by Akeem Hicks every other play. And it lets route concepts open up downfield for bigger gains. Mm-hmm. Kirk's got to be able to have that confidence to stand in the pocket and deliver. If he can do that, this team can go far in the playoffs. But it's all up to that one thing. Because we're going to see improvement from the defense. We're going to see some form of regression from the offense. But can we see progression on other areas to be able to take that next step? I'm fascinated to watch it. And Ingram is going to end up being a big part of that.
Now, I don't want to see any regression on the offense. I want to see.
I agree. But I'm trying to be real here, Dave. We're going to see some form of regression. But our EPA was in the middle. It was closer to average than it was to elite last year. And our points per game was nowhere near it should have been, considering how many yards we got on a consistent basis. We didn't finish. And I think with how things are projecting, and if Kevin O'Connell can extract that, we can really take another step. And I'm very excited about that. We'll talk more about Ingram next week. There was a lot to talk about with Ingram, and I'll address this just now. we're not going to talk about the off-field stuff. It is there. It's awful. It's gross.
But
we're
it
not going
happened
to
when
beat
they
it ad
were
nauseam.
juveniles, and hopefully he's grown from that and learned. And
it's just one of those things, Dave. You're right. It is what it is. There's really nothing we can do about it. It's bad.
Yep.
But we on this show are only going to talk about the football stuff because
that's what we care about. Really.
Well, it's not just all that we care about. There's just nothing we can do about the off field. It's there. Yeah. It is what it is.
But we're as much as we like a particular player, right? I might like Ezra Cleveland. Everybody knows I like Ezra Cleveland, right? I might like Adam Thielen, right? My favorite all-time Viking was Jimmy Kleinsaucer. Because I got to watch him in college, and I got to meet him. Great guy, right?
Yeah.
But when they're on the team, I really don't care about them as, and this may be cold, I don't care about what they're, on a first level, I don't care about what the rest of them are. The rest of them as a human being is. I care about how are they producing? How are they getting the Vikings to win? How are they, progressing in the goal to win that championship we've never seen, right? Mary, you can talk about that in the comments. It's been so long. We want to see these guys, they're signed up to play football, drafted or signed, however it is, to play football. I care about the football. I was in the military, right? I enlisted and re-enlisted and stuff. I did that voluntarily. These guys play football voluntarily, right? But they do it for the love of the game and love of what they're doing, like I did it in the military. But in the long run, it is to win, period. That's what they're there for. I want to see these guys, and it's what I care about, whether it's Ingram cleaning up his run blocking, or if it's Naylor cleaning up route running or catching, or whatever the flaws are on individual players. I want to see it happen. That's why I'm a fan. It's just been too damn long. And what are we in the 62nd, 63rd season we're going into? Come on. I want to see him win. Yes, I like the players. Yes, I want to like the players. But if they go out on a boat in Lake Minnetonka, does it affect how they play? If it doesn't affect how they play, they could be lousy.
Well, it affected Fred Smoot. I don't know if that means anything.
But, hey, as long as they win, everything's forgiven. As long as you win.
Yeah. There's one more thing I want to talk about with the draft, and then we're going to get to Lewis Cine, Dave. How did you feel about Kwesi Spielman this past weekend? Or is it Rick Adofo-Mensah? Because let me tell you, the trades were still prevalent. But I want to dive into that because it wasn't identical. It was not the same as Rick. What it was a different methodology to maximize trades.
Mm-hmm.
And Kwesi manipulated the board really well. Did he win every trade on every chart? No. In fact, the Jimmy Johnson and Rich Hill trade charts, Jimmy Johnson one is the one that's been used throughout the league for about my entire life.
Since Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, 32, 33 years. Mm-hmm. We got slaughtered. In the Rich Hill trade chart, we lost. The production-based charts, the deep analytical charts, all had us winning. Mm-hmm. Giving up 12 and 46 for 32, 34, and 66. Cool. Like, that ended up kind of working out. But when you look at everything else included, the fact that he was willing to package and trade back up, including sending next year's fourth, which was a little bit of a surprise, considering he traded up for a fourth-round pick instead of just trading up 4 spots. I found that one interesting. But he was able to manipulate and get draft capital back. Giving him next year's 4th means the Vikings currently only have 5 picks going into next year's draft. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 6th. The 7th round pick goes to Denver as part of the Stephen Weatherly trade.
Okay.
So that's worth mentioning here. But I did like how Kwesi was not afraid to move up or down based on who was available and what the board looked like and how they felt they could attack it.
Mm-hmm.
They took Cine, they moved down and got 53 and 59, then used 53 to go back to 42. They gave up 77 and a 6th and got 122 in return. I loved it. I loved the aggressiveness. Then I'm just going to compile picks strategy. They utilized what they had to manipulate it and then cash it in. Mm-hmm. Like sitting at a blackjack table. Hey, I can double down. Let's double down. Oh, I split my aces and got 2 10s. All right, I'm going to cash out. Then we'll go to the roulette table and put some more money down. And we're going to reinvest. And that's kind of the same strategy that Kwesi had. And I loved it. I love the fact that we got 2 top 25 players in Cine and Andrew Booth Jr. We got players at positions of future need. Ed Ingram, Brian Asamoah. Akayleb Evans is a good one. And I talked about it on the stream, and I'm excited to dive even further into his tape. I wanted Tariq Woolen or Zion McCollum. I wanted the hyper athlete.
Right.
We got a very good athlete in Evans who struggles with the ball in the air. And for his relative athletic score of like 9.63, so 96th percentile athlete, he's too tight in the hips. But so I'm really interested to see what they saw because they didn't think he should be available at that spot. And that's an interesting thing too. Did their board stack up good enough compared to the rest of the market to where they were actually able to take advantage of what the rest of the league was doing? Like the Steelers, for example, and to just try and tie it all together, okay? There was no quarterback taken between 20 and 74. There were quarterbacks that were graded higher than Kenny Pickett. Mm-hmm. 3 of them on my board, in fact. There were no quarterbacks taken between them. Did the Steelers misevaluate the board by taking a quarterback early when they probably could have gotten him later? And that's what I'm talking about here with these trades. The value for, like, let's say a guy like Ingram or Asamoah, it's a little bit overvalued, sure. Could they have gotten him later and picked up more capital instead of taking them there? That's what I'm really interested in with this class because I don't know that answer.
Well, but if you look at it, and you talked about it earlier, if you look with the Nick's tweet, right, about the speeds, it looks very much like Kwesi had, and we're only seeing this in hindsight, a methodology. One, the taking it from the top 5 conferences, right? All the people there. And 2, looking at speed, right? He wanted speed. So he's got speed. And if he sees a player available, even though it's maybe ahead of where the big consensus board, and there's nothing wrong with the consensus board. Consensus board is a marvelous tool, and it hits on something like 80%, 80 some odd percent. Sees them ahead, bigger value, that they make they're from the right school block, check. That they have that first 10 split, check. Do they have other things on the list we don't know? Check, right? And if he has those, he goes, I got to get it now, or I have a bigger chance of losing it down the road. It's like, if he's being a stockbroker, does he recommend to a client, you need to sell this now because I see it declining here in the near future? Does the customer sell early, or does the customer risk waiting till it gets to the very highest point and then maybe wait, one day too long, and then that stock is crashed, right? Of course, you want to sell at the highest point. You want the maximum value, but you've got to weigh that risk of, Do I take it now and expend a little bit of that value equation on getting it early to get what I want, or do I risk it? And there's it's a tipping point somewhere in there that he knows, and he may have selected those guys early because he felt that tipping point was between then and when he'd be available to pick later. So that's the route he took. I have no fault with that.
Yeah, and I want to reference, Dave, something that Drew mentioned as far as the trades. You take Hamilton at 12, you aren't getting either Cine or Booth. Is Hamilton that much better than Cine where you want to give up Andrew Booth Jr.? I'm going to be honest. I don't think so. And I love Kyle Hamilton. He was the number 2 player on my board. But Cine and Booth were both in the top 30. In this situation, I'd rather have the 2 top 30 guys than Kyle Hamilton. Because I think Cine can do a lot of similar things to Kyle Hamilton, even though they're a slightly different profile. I like the idea of having 2 really, really talented players to add to my defense.
Yeah, you get more in the long run that way.
Mm-hmm. Dave, we've gone almost 40 minutes in the show, and we haven't talked about our great friends at Lake Monster Brewing, who, by the way, did a fantastic job hosting us on night 2. What a wonderful group of people. Met the head brewer, Matt. Matt. He joined us on the show. Great guy. Had some nice insight and told us about why he brewed the Norseman Red Ale for us. Dave, let me tell you, you would love that Norseman Red Ale. Think of your malty red ale with a nice blend of hops. Really, really good stuff. But I don't want to brag.
Well, I heard
anymore.
the best description is take a Killian's and merge it with an IPA, and it's the child thereof. It sounds great to me because I do love red ales. And I love my IPAs. So I can't wait. Matt said he's going to try to send me some, so we'll see. And yes, he can. He has the license to do so.
There we go.
Hey, folks, if you haven't had the chance and you're up in the Twin Cities, go by Lake Monster in St. Paul. It's right across the river from Minneapolis. It's easy to find. Go by and find the beer you like. They make such a variety, from sours to brown ales and stouts, and of course me and my IPAs and lagers and wheat beers, and you'll find something, I guarantee you, that you will enjoy, and you can't beat it for nothing, and you'll make great friends in the process. And it only comes from Lake Monster Brewing. I proudly wear their hat because their beer is that good. Unlike that macro you talked about getting prior to the show. Budweiser, by the way.
Hey, you know what? I'll tell you what. The second Lake Monster starts selling flats at $20, I will never drink Budweiser again.
But hey, folks, I can't. Next time I'm up in the cities, and I hope to be up sometime soon because I want to catch a game, in particular up in the new stadium. Trust me, I am making a trip purposefully out to Lake Monster.
Well, I'll tell you,
That's
Dave.
how good it is.
If you make a stop up here, you've got a room to stay here in my house. Try and cut those travel costs. Plus, I have enough beer to make you want to puke. The good stuff. I got enough doubles and triples to get us both hammered. It's a good time. But we only have about 20 minutes left. And Dave, we got to talk about this new guy, Lewis Cine. I want to say a quick hello to some of the people in the comments. We've got Mary killing it as always. Nick, Tyler Browning from Blue Chip Scouting joining us. Drew Bunting calling me Malik Forness. You're dang right. And we will talk next week, about how Malik Willis falling to 86 overall is an abomination. And I said that multiple times on night 2. I don't get it. I've never gotten it. Makes no sense to me. But that's another thing here nor there. Dave, have you had an opportunity to watch some Lewis Cine yet?
Yes, I've watched some highlights of him, and actually one where they were trying to figure out, it was through Luke Braun, who missed the coverage.
Yeah. Which play was it? Because in the Lockdown Viking Discord that Luke Braun runs, I asked a few questions on plays because I'm like, is this his fault? Because the scheme is something that I'm learning still more because I am not great at it. Luke is great at it. Nick Olson, who we used his tweet earlier in the show,
and Matt Freeze.
Yes, they are. And then Mike, he writes for SI Bengals. Sans Wagata on Twitter, tremendous asset. He knows scheme and he loves talking ball. Make sure you go give those guys a follow.
Okay.
If you ever have any scheme questions, they're going to be great resources for you to help out. But Cine, I comped him to Andrew Sendejo if Sendejo was a hyper athlete and really smart, because that's what Cine is. One thing that really stood out to me, he's got great vision and football IQ, and he knows what's happening in front of him and is able to react quickly and with explosion. Multiple instances where he's playing a deep middle or a deep half, and he sees a little swing pass, and he is zooming like he's Lightning McQueen in Cars or some crap.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes the guy out. Because when you have a bunch formation, all right? So you've got one here, one here, one here. The guy back, he gets the screen. These guys block, all right? So then there's a hole for the receiver to run through. And when the receiver runs through it, if they hold their blocks, they should be able to get to the second level really quick, and hopefully they can beat that crossing linebacker. Well, what Cine does is he's all the way out here, okay? He's able to cut that angle and get in that hole and prevent whatever receiver is catching the screen pass from getting more than a couple yards. That's not normal behavior. That's not something you see every day. That's something Harrison Smith really can't do. They're going to get 6 or 7 yards before Smith gets to him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Smith ran a 40 in the mid 4.5, Cine 4.37 with 99% explosion scores. That 10-yard split, the most important thing. Any one of these guys is fast at full speed. Can you be fast getting there? Cine is fast getting there, and that's more important, arguably, than being fast when you hit full speed. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that he's got that vision and he has the intelligence to understand what's going on in front of him. You'll see it multiple times, both pre-snap and post-snap, where he's directing people in front of him. Be like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. You need to do this, 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 and this. There's one play against Arkansas. They're running a double crosser. So on the near side, there's the guy in the slot, and it's a tight end, and then a guy split out wide. They're both running deep crossers. The tight end's going more shallow. The receiver's going on the far outside. So Cine notices this because he's playing a deep middle. Mm-hmm. He gets the star and just tells him, hey, take inside. So then he breaks off of his defender, doubles up the inside receiver, and Cine takes the deep guy, basically making both throws almost impossible to get to because the guy he sent off the deep receiver is now essentially floating between the two. He's close enough to still potentially make a play on the ball behind, and now he's really doubling the guy in front. It's supposed to be the easier throw. That kind of intelligence is something you don't see every day, and if you understand a Kirby Smart defense, which is an offshoot of Nick Saban is one of the smartest men to ever coach the game of football, especially from a defensive side. And Nick Saban made one of the smartest coaching decisions of all time. He was the head coach at Toledo in the early 90s. A head coach. He went to be Bill Belichick's defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns in 1991. He learned with Bill Belichick, who's the greatest coach in the history of professional football. It's not a coincidence that Nick Saban is the greatest coach in the history of college football. There is a correlation there. Two of the smartest defensive minds to ever walk the planet worked together for 4 years. And if it weren't for Art Modell moving the team, that 95 team could have been a Super Bowl contender. Everything went wrong that year. They all got fired, and Saban ended up going to Michigan State, and Bill Belichick went to go coach again with Bill Parcells. Rest is history. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting there is now Kirby Smart learned from Nick Saban. These defenses are insane. What they ask their players to do, they ask their players to be real smart, know everything that's going on in front of them. Dave, Cine doesn't just know what the linebackers are doing and the corners are doing. He knows the stunts. He knows the responsibilities of each down lineman.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, and his ability to react really, really quick, they're able to do things that most teams aren't able to do. They design plays to specifically take guys out of them. They design these screen passes to take Cine out and let these receivers try and get upfield for 8 to 10 yards. Cine's good enough to recognize it right away, and when he sees it, he's not flat-footed. He explodes out of the gate and is able to take that out. Really, really impressive stuff. And one of the other things I saw, because he is not the most fluid in his back pedal, he stands a little upright, because when you watch Kaiir Elam, Florida kid, corner, and I know a lot of people did going into this draft because that was a position the Vikings needed to target. He dips his butt. You remember like when you were taught squats, Dave, and you were basically taught to sit in a chair when you're going down? Yeah, it looks like Kaiir Elam's sitting in an office chair and he's just being pushed back. That's how far down he goes. And it's really impressive to watch. And Cine, instead of being down, yeah, he's more like this. Mm-hmm. Like, his back's still pretty upright. And it's not the biggest deal in the world. But he's still able to explode really well out of that. Imagine if he could explode when he's down that much.
Right.
And I think that's somewhere where he could take another step. But the intelligence just pops off the screen. The explosiveness. And this is where the Anderson-Dejo comp comes in, Dave. He hits like a madman. He hits like he wants pain. He hits like he wants the other person to just crumble in front of him. It's just nasty. You got to go back 2020, the second quarter, Florida, Georgia. He got ejected from that game for targeting. He took out Kyle Pitts with a hit so nasty that he basically knocked himself kablooey, went all loopy, and was just lying on top of Pitts. And like Kyle Trask was running down to check on his tight end, and he was about to like yank him off, and then he realized, oh crap, like he's not being cocky, he's donezo. And then you see him get up, and he's just kind of like, oh, like he got ejected, he got himself a concussion. That's that kind of a reckless abandon. And it's not as reckless as Sendejo, because Sendejo was just a gnarly bastard. He didn't just want to inflict pain. He wanted to inflict pain on everyone. He just wanted to level you and destroy you and didn't care about anything that happened to him. Cine's more calculated than that. And something I really appreciate, because of his speed and explosiveness, he can zoom and he can take you out with a great form tackle and lay the wood down. But he's not like, remember Steve Atwater?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Steve Atwater is a top 5 favorite player of all time for me. I loved watching that man play football. There was a play at the end of the Super Bowl against the Green Bay Packers where he hit the defender so hard that not only did he knock him out, he knocked the corner out and himself. Like, that's reckless abandon. This is way more calculated. Like, one thing I learned today, did you know Danielle Hunter has no roughing the passer penalties in his career?
No, I didn't know that.
That's pretty wild, right?
Uh-huh.
But then take a minute to think about it. How calculated and smart he is when he does hit the quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
He's not using a reckless abandon. He's being very smart, hitting him to the side,
and the wrap,
not whipping him down.
And pull down rather than plowing through and landing on him and burying his shoulder into his collarbone. Hey, wait a minute. I like that play.
Hey, Steve, I am old enough to have watched Steve Atwater. I am 32 years old. I started watching football almost like a religion when I was 4.5 years old. I cannot tell you how many Steve Atwater games I watched. All-time top 5 favorite player for me. Warren Moon. You see the jerseys in the backdrop. I have probably watched 150 Warren Moon games. You can find a lot on YouTube, my man. I am obsessed with some of these old, like, 90s players. Like, Leroy Butler is another favorite of mine, and I hated watching him play because he was so good, and he always ruined my day when the Vikings played the Packers. Leroy Butler having to wait so long for the Hall of Fame was a damn travesty. But I digress because we're getting way off topic here. But the point is, Cine is way more calculated with how he hits people. He's just smart, intelligent, squares them up, takes them down. One element about his explosiveness, Dave, that gets him in trouble. He plays out of control sometimes, where he just wants to be shot out of a cannon, and he doesn't necessarily take the smartest angle. He doesn't square them up. He kind of dives at the legs. There was a play against Alabama where he did just that, and it showed up a couple other times too.
Right.
He needs to play under control. And that doesn't necessarily mean play with less intelligence, play less explosive. It's like, hey, you're trap shooting, all right? And you're trying to shoot clay pigeons. Are you just going to want to go boom, 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 hold the gun out right here? Or are you going to want to square up, look down the sight, and fire? And that he needs to go from being a little wild man and just spraying bullets everywhere to try and get it, and he needs to just aim with precision. If he can do that and really hone that in, we're going to talk about a different level of player. And I'm very excited to see how Harrison Smith being in the building is going to help him, how Ed Donatel is going to help him, Durante Jones, Patrick Peterson. There are a lot of really intelligent men and women in that building that are going to be able to help him take the next step. And I think this guy could be an all-pro in 5 years.
Well,
like,
Aaron
the sky is the limit.
Nailed it about Browner. I was thinking the same thing. If you take somebody with his talent and physical capabilities and you pair them with Harrison Smith, we all know how smart Harrison Smith is. We know how he plays. That it's calculated. It's very smart. He makes up for his lack of speed and lack of overall skills with his mind, right? And how he plays the game to become a perennial all-pro safety, right? Possibly future Hall of Famer. You take that and have him grab Cine under the wing and say, hey, listen to me, I'm going to show you some stuff, right? And how to refine that and take that energy and, like you said, focus it, laser beam, where to look at the angles. You talk about shooting skeet. Skeet's about angles, right? And you're looking down the barrel, but you're actually looking at the bird or the clay. And you're looking at that and where to go. It's the same thing when we talk about defenders taking angles to tackle. He's going to do the same thing. He's going to take angles to the ball and how to look at that and refine that so that he's focused on the belly button instead of the bigger deal. And then he's constantly getting there and hitting and not missing when he goes for the legs, but he's going through the trunk, the good tackles. You see Harrison Smith now, last year, he'll come down and he'll break down in his stance ready to tackle somebody, and he's looking at their torso, right? You can juke all you want, but you can't juke your torso, your belly button. Where that goes is where you're going, right? And he focuses it, and then he hits through. He hits throughs and wraps. He can teach that and say, hey, this is how we do it. Joey Browner was good at it. You take that, you take somebody as talented as Cine, and he has more talent and raw athletic ability than Hamilton did, or does, and you meld that, I think we have a future guy with the potential to make us all proud, right? To be a Harrison Smith, the sequel, right? And you get both of them playing together for the next couple of years, and I think it's great. And people worry about, I think it was Evil to Evil talking about, well, did we pass up the best player available? I don't know necessarily that we did, but I think we took the longer term route, the rebuild route, taking players, the best player in a position that we thought needed replaced. And if you could take that, I just lost my train of thought, but you take that safety and do that. Oh, just came back. That's tequila helps. Take that. Ed Donatel plays, we've got three good safeties, right now.
Yeah.
Harrison Smith and Lewis Cine, along with Cameron Bynum. We all want to see Cameron Bynum play. We saw him play briefly last year, and he played good, very, very good. We want to see him again. Ed Donatel tends to play more dime package than he does nickel package. Dime package uses 3 safeties, whereas nickel package uses traditionally 3 corners. I think we're going to see more dime packages coming up in the future. Combine that with guys that are smart, knowing what they're doing, Cine, Harrison Smith, Bynum, and I think this defense takes a big step when it comes to pass coverage and run against the run if they get to that second level. Just my opinion.
Absolutely. Dave, we didn't think we were going to even come close to going an hour.
No.
We're at an hour right now. Let me tell you, this has been a really fun, stimulating conversations. We've had a lot of really good people here in the chat.
Oh, we've had a ton tonight.
Yeah,
and
it's been great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we love it. I appreciate all the interactions, guys. Next week, let me tell you, we're going to have some good stuff. We're going to talk Andrew Booth Jr., Ed Ingram, Brian Asamoah, the football players.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to talk about what they bring to this team, why they were drafted, and we are gonna spend about 20 minutes on each guy. It's going to be really fun. But Dave, we have some killer shows coming up this week.
Oh yes,
and it's really important that we have all these shows because there is a lot to dissect with the NFL draft and how the Vikings approached it. Who do we have coming up? We have the full slate, don't we?
We sure do. We have In the Huddle tomorrow night. Jason's gathering guys who are going to be on tomorrow night, and they're going to talk whatever they wish to talk about. I have no idea. I'm sure every show this week's going to deal with some sort of draft recap, but how they go about it. That's what's great about Climbing the Pocket. We have so big a variety of commentators and personalities that you can always find something you like, whether it be on the live broadcast like In the Huddle or the podcasts like Kindred Skulls and Unbelievable. You've got things to watch. Jason will be there tomorrow night. Jason's always great at running his show. Wednesday night on Vikings Happy Hour, we have a guest. I don't remember. Matt's got to shoot me an email who it was. But we have people lined up for the next month. Beat writers that you're used to. Most of the Score North gang and beyond are going to be joining us on those shows. Thursday, we have Vikings Hot Takes with the one and only... Where is it? The birthday boy today, Mr. Flip Mozzie.
Well, happy birthday, Flip.
And that's why I
didn't know it was his birthday.
And yes, today is his birthday. And Eric Thompson of the Daily Norseman. And then, of course, at the end of the week on Saturday, you get two old bloggers, me and Darren, as we'll break this all down like we normally do with some of the best graphics on the planet. We'll look at it from an old-timer's perspective, so to speak, and how this actually might be a good deal. And we might actually have a team that will progress beyond the 500 mark. We shall see. It's going to be full. And if you like this comment, please like the show. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're hoping to hit 2,000 subscribers soon. If you know some Vikings fans that need some great Vikings talk, shoot them our way. And as always, if you want to get the notifications, hit the ring the bell. We appreciate it. And if you're listening on your to the podcast the day afterwards, hey, give us a 5-star. It helps. And every bit helps. And it helps to do nothing but grow the channel. We hope to get bigger and bigger as the off season goes, as we're already starting. This week will be, this week and into the next couple, we're looking at what we did in the draft as we build up towards the season. We'll get into the off season. We're already looking at what we can do better, bigger, and, more fun for you during the season. So it's all coming. It's a big week. So join us.
No, it 100% is a big week, Dave. And I can't stress enough. The little things of just hitting like and subscribing, it means a big deal for us. It helps us. It helps us grow. It helps us be able to provide great content for all of you. And it shows Jason that I am doing a good job and I don't suck because I have Malik Willis above Desmond Ridder, okay?
Hey, you
I
weren't
need
the
that
only
right
one.
now.
That's
I
going to
wasn't
be
the
a
only
talking
one.
point
and
out of this draft for years.
I'm still right about that until something else happens. I'm still right. I contend that. But with that being said, thank you for spending your Monday with us. Thank you for just following along throughout this whole weekend and being just great supporters. Mike, I'm gonna come for you, my man. You watch your Canadian mouth, okay? And if you don't remember, Mike, he was on the show 2 weeks ago, and he gave me a lot of grief about quarterbacks. So that being said, please keep tuning in. Next week is day 2, guys. And then we're gonna, depending on how much time I get for film, we may split up day 3, guys, into 2 weeks, and then we have a potentially fun project coming this summer. Something that I had already talked to Dave about a few months ago, but I'm still putting things together for that. And if I'm not able to get that taken care of, we're going to have some fun in a different way. Until then, from producer Dave, from myself, the real Forno, have a fantastic week, and Skol Vikings!
Skol Vikings! Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a special shout out goes to our partners, The Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found, and to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. Skol, everybody.